Well, hello there and welcome back to History Amnesia. It's Josh. Today, we're digging into something a little different. We're not getting our hands dirty with grime, but with time itself. We're peeling back the layers of history right here in the heart of America in what we now call Missouri. Long before the Gateway Arch was even a glimmer in someone's eye, and way before anyone was showing anyone else anything, this land was home to a vibrant and complex society. People lived here, worked here, raised families, and built a world. It's a story that's often forgotten, buried under centuries of what came after. But today we're going to try and remember. So who were these first Missourians, the oldest recognized tribe, or more accurately, the cultural group that left the first deep footprints were the people of the late Archaic period. This isn't a tribe with a single name you might recognize like the Osage or the Missouria, who came much later. Think of them as the foundational layer, the people who set the stage. They were living and thriving in this region from roughly 3000 BC to about 1000 BC. That's a long time ago. To put that into perspective, the Great Pyramids in Egypt were being built around the same time these folks were hunting and gathering along the Missouri River. It's a chapter of human history that's truly ancient. Now you're probably wondering what these ancient people looked like. Based on the skeletal remains archaeologists have carefully studied, they were robust and hardy individuals. Life was tough, and their bodies showed it. They were built for survival in the wilderness. What really made them unique for their time was their transition from a purely nomadic lifestyle. While earlier groups wandered constantly, the late Archaic people started to settle down. They established base camps and villages, returning to the same spots year after year. This shift was revolutionary, allowing them to understand the land, its seasons, and its resources on a much deeper level than anyone before them. This new, more settled lifestyle led to a more complex social structure. They weren't just small, scattered family bands anymore. Evidence suggests they organized themselves into larger communities, perhaps with dozens or even hundreds of people living together. This would have required rules, leaders, and a way to cooperate on a big scale. You had hunters, gatherers, toolmakers, and spiritual leaders, all working together. It was the beginning of the kind of society we can recognize today, a community where everyone has a role to play. It's the dirty job of building a civilization from the ground up, and these people were the first architects in this part of the world. When you decide to stick around one place for a while, the first thing you need is a decent place to live. The late Archaic people weren't building log cabins or stone forts. Their homes were practical and suited to their environment. They often built simple, semi-permanent shelters made from wood, saplings, and bark. Think of them as sturdy huts or wattle and daub structures, where woven lattice frames were covered with a sticky mixture of wet soil, clay, and sand. These homes were often built in clusters, forming small villages in river valleys where resources were plentiful. They provided essential shelter from the harsh Missouri winters and the sweltering summer heat. And what about the food? You can't build a community on an empty stomach. These folks were expert hunters and gatherers, masters of their domain. Their diet was rich and varied, a testament to their incredible knowledge of the local ecosystem. They hunted white-tailed deer, turkey, and smaller game. They fished the abundant rivers for catfish and drum, but they didn't just rely on meat. They gathered a huge variety of wild plants, nuts like hickory and walnuts, and seeds. They were also some of the first people in the region to experiment with agriculture, cultivating native plants like squash and gourds. For drink, fresh water from the rivers and streams was the staple. Life wasn't just about survival, it was about community. Living in larger groups meant they needed ways to organize themselves. While we don't know the exact details, it's likely they had a clan-based system. Families were the core unit, but these families were part of larger clans that connected everyone in the village. This social glue was essential for everything from organizing large hunting parties to defending the village from threats. Leadership was probably based on skill, wisdom, and experience. The best hunter or the wisest elder would have naturally commanded respect and helped guide the community's decisions. This level of social organization also meant they could create better tools. It wasn't just one person making a spear point for themselves. You had specialists, true craftspeople who had the time and skill to perfect their work. They created beautifully crafted stone tools, like the distinctive banner stones, which were polished stone objects that might have been used as weights for spear throwers, or atlatls. They also made tools from bone and wood for all sorts of jobs. This specialization is a hallmark of a society that is becoming more complex, a society that has moved beyond simple day-to-day survival. For the late archaic people, the world was not just a physical place, it was a deeply spiritual one. They saw life and meaning in the rivers, the forests, the animals they hunted, and the sky above. Their beliefs were likely animistic, meaning they believed that spirits inhabited all things, both living and non-living. A successful hunt wasn't just about skill, it was about showing respect to the spirit of the animal. A good harvest wasn't just about hard work, it was a blessing from the land itself. This worldview connected them intimately to their environment, making them participants in a living, breathing world, not just its masters. Their spiritual beliefs were expressed through rituals. While we can't know the songs they sang or the prayers they spoke, the artifacts they left behind give us clues. Objects like the aforementioned banner stones might have had ceremonial significance beyond their practical use. Strange, carefully crafted stone plummets might have been used in rituals or worn as pendants by spiritual leaders. These weren't just random trinkets. They were likely powerful symbols, objects that connected the physical world to the spiritual one. Rituals would have marked important life events, births, deaths, the changing of seasons, and successful hunts. Now, when we think of ancient Missouri cultures, we often think of mounds. And yes, the late archaic people were among the very first mound builders in the region. However, their mounds were different from the massive, flat-top temple mounds of the later Mississippian culture like those at Cahokia. The late archaic people built smaller, conical earthen mounds. These weren't for temples or the houses of chiefs. Instead, these mounds served a sacred purpose that was directly tied to their beliefs about life and death. They were monuments, but on a more personal, community-focused scale. These mounds were, in fact, burial sites. This is where we see their beliefs about the afterlife take physical form. They didn't just leave their dead to the elements, they honored them. The dead were often buried in pits, sometimes in a flexed or fetal position, and then covered with earth. Over time, as more individuals were buried in the same sacred spot, these burial sites grew into the conical mounds we can still find today. This practice shows a profound respect for the deceased and a belief in a journey beyond this life. It also reinforced the community's connection to a specific place, making it their ancestral land. So what is the legacy of Missouri's oldest tribe? Their story is not one of dramatic collapse or a mysterious disappearance. Instead, their culture slowly evolved. Over thousands of years, their descendants, building on the foundations they laid, became the people of the later woodland and Mississippian periods. The skills they mastered, settled village life, early agriculture, complex toolmaking, and mound building, were the building blocks for the even more complex societies that followed. They were the pioneers who figured out how to make a permanent home in the challenging but rich landscape of the Midwest. Their work, their innovations, and their very DNA were passed down through the generations. Their significance is monumental, even if their mounds aren't the biggest. They represent a critical turning point in human history in North America. They show us the transition from a purely mobile hunter-gatherer existence to a more settled, community-based way of life. This was a massive gamble. It meant relying on a specific area to provide everything, and it required a whole new level of social cooperation. The fact that they succeeded and thrived for thousands of years is a testament to their ingenuity, their resilience, and their deep understanding of the world around them. They truly laid the groundwork for everything that came after. When we look at a Missouri river or walk through a forest, it's easy to see an empty wilderness. But it was never empty. For thousands of years, it was a home. It was a place of work, family, and faith. The story of the late archaic people reminds us that the history of this land is incredibly deep, far deeper than the few hundred years we usually read about in textbooks. Their voices may be silent, but their legacy echoes in the earth itself, in the mounds they built, and the artifacts they left buried in the soil. They are the first chapter in a very, very long story. And that's the job for today. Digging up the past to understand the present. It's a messy, complicated business, but someone's got to do it. Thanks for joining me here on History Amnesia as we remembered Missouri's first people. I hope it gives you something to think about the next time you look at the landscape. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, do me a favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss our next trip into the forgotten corners of history. Until then, stay curious.